instead of listening to all of the twisted, demented, angry, frustrated, negative, low self-esteem thoughts that are spewing out of you, that the devil oftentimes is speaking in your mind and then making you think you thought it up. He's low down. He's just low down like that. But these thoughts will come to you that you have not even invited. But I want to encourage you, start talking to yourself. You need to start talking and start speaking affirming and encouraging words and positive words in order to replace those negative thoughts. And once your thinking has changed, your attitude and your actions will eventually follow. Once you're able to change your thinking, your attitude and your actions will follow. Now remember that resilience is the ability to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions or situations. You want to always be resilient. Whenever you get frustrated, you need to pull off out of the resilience that God has built in you. It is that resilience that has it's put a sort of rubber-like quality to you. I don't mean the ability to bounce checks, but I mean for you to bounce back to where you are elastic, you are flexible, you are adaptable. You will be surprised how much frustration will be stripped out of your life when you realize that you have the power to adapt to a wide variety of circumstances instead of being so rigid, so that if things don't go your way in your time frame, that you're not losing your mind because you're such a control freak. You have to be resilient, which is the ability to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions or situations. The palm tree is resilient to the storm. So when the storm comes, it bends over. If it didn't bend, it would snap in two and break. The mighty oak would break because it's rigid and it won't bend, but the palm tree will bend. And when the storm passes up, it rises back up. You ought to get a lesson from nature and realize you are the trees of the Lord. So that when the storms come, if you really want resilience, you have to have a certain level of elasticity in you where you are flexible enough to bend, flexible enough to bend. Now, all of us experience frustration in one area or another. And remember what was happening here with Moses and Pharaoh. I think the one that he gave you, I gave you several things. I mentioned some things that make you frustrated. I want to go through those right quick. Number one, not having sufficient money to do what you need to do or feel like you need to do. That can frustrate you. Not having sufficient money to do what you feel that you need to do. Number two, the sense that you are running out of time to be able to do what you want to do or need to do. The sense that you don't have enough money is number one. The sense that you don't have enough time, number two. Number three, operating in a job that is not designed for you can frustrate you out of your wits. Can frustrate you out of your wits. That's like men walking around out in a rock quarry or working in a coal mine with high-heel shoes on and a girdle. That's operating in a job that you're not designed for. Number four, not really liking where you are, but being afraid to leave. You know, folks cussing the situation currently, but they're scared to leave. But on the other side of fear lies freedom. Number five, watching somebody that you care about live beneath their potential. That is one of the most frustrating things. Is to have people that you care about, you know what their potential is, and you see them living beneath their potential, and it frustrates you out of your wits. Number six, circumstances which are beyond your control. Whether you're stuck in traffic, waiting in line, holding on the telephone, dealing with the government. Circumstances which are beyond your control. Number seven, not knowing your purpose can be a very frustrating thing when you don't know your purpose. Number eight, this is the one that I think that was frustrating Moses, is having an assignment but not having clarity as to how to get it done. Having an assignment but not having clarity as to how to get it done. Number nine, not having sufficient health or energy to do what you need to do. Not having sufficient health or energy to do what you need to do. That's frustrating. Number 10 is not being organized in your thoughts, unable to express yourself. Not being organized in your thoughts. Number 11, trying your hardest to make things happen and yet doors still remain closed. Trying your hardest to make things happen and the door still remains closed. Number 12, not being able to gain access to the person you love or from whom you desire help. Not being able to gain access. Number 13 is not being able to resolve conflict. Number 14 is having to submit to controls that you do not understand or agree with. Having to submit to controls that you don't understand or agree with. Number 15, having things happen for which we have no explanation. I'm sure that frustrated Job when the Bible says Job was a righteous man. He walked upright. He eschewed evil. And yet all 10 of his children died. His livestock was taken. His body was afflicted. And he had no explanation for it. And number 16 is seeing something bigger in you than the reality that is around you, yet not knowing how to make it happen. That's a frustrating situation. But I want you to realize that frustration, I would probably sum it up into maybe four main categories. Four main categories. We get frustrated when we have a lack of control. A lack of control. You have a lack of control in an area, we get frustrated because we can't control somebody else's action. We can't control the economy. We can't control our automobile that won't start. We get frustrated through a lack of control. Secondly, through a lack of organization. A lack of organization. If you're not organized, you will wind up frustrated because you won't be able to find your keys, your shoes, your glasses. And we are frustrated because we lack organization. If you lack control, you become frustrated at various times. If you lack organizations, you can become frustrated. Thirdly, if you lack preparation. If you lack preparation, you can become frustrated because you're just not properly prepared. So you become frustrated if you lack preparation. If you lack control, you'll be terribly, terribly frustrated. If you're not organized, you'll be frustrated. If you're not prepared, you will be frustrated. And then the fourth one, if you lack action, if you lack action, it's like ready, aim, and you keep aiming at stuff and you never pull the trigger. You lack action. It'll frustrate you to train for war and never fight. You get frustrated to be trained to do something and you never ever get the opportunity to do it. A lack of control, a lack of organization, a lack of preparation, a lack of action. Now let me say this to you, as I've said before, that in life you will never be dealt a hand that with God's help cannot be turned into a winning hand. Never. And remember that life really does not have problems. Life only has opportunities. And let me say this to you. I'd write this down if I were you. Whatever God has already given to you will create anything else that he has promised to you. I'm going to say that again. Whatever God has already given to you will create anything else that he has promised to you. God has already given to you everything that you need. What he has given you will create everything else that he has promised to you. He has given you the seed of it. He's given you the potential of it to create everything else that God has promised to you. And so, please understand this, that your failure will last only as long as you permit it. Your failure will last only as long as you permit it. Your failure will last only as long as you permit it. Or let me say it this way. Intolerance of the present, intolerance of the present creates a future. Intolerance of the present creates a future. And so, if you really want to be able to deal effectively with frustration, we're using the acronym STOP. Stop. The S means sit down. That means calm down. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. We've gone through that. Sit down, bring it down. Whatever you need to do to just simply calm yourself down, taking deep breaths, taking a hot bath, getting a massage, going for a walk, a drive, whatever it takes for you to calm you down. Calm you down. Other people take stuff, you know, in a bottle. All kinds of stuff. I don't know what you need, as long as you don't break the law. As long as it's not immoral or illicit or illegal. And so, calm it down. Because as long as you're riled up, you don't think straight. When you get frustrated, you are not thinking with your heart or your mind, you're thinking with your emotions. And emotions rarely ever make good decisions. Rarely ever make good decisions. And so you want to make sure that you simply sit down. Just sit down. The T is to think. You think about what has frustrated you and why. Just think through it. Think through it. Ask yourself various questions. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The O is observe. Observe. We learn primarily through observation. We learn through observation. We've gone through that. Through being able to behold something. Jesus was able to do to run the race that was set before him. You know, we're supposed to run that race that's set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. And Jesus was able to do it for the joy that was set before him. The joy, but he was observing something. He was observing something. Now here's the P. You ready for the P? The P is plan. I know you thought it was prayer. It's to plan. When you get frustrated, remember one of the things that causes frustration is a lack of preparation. A lack of preparation. Just not ready. Not ready. It's frustrating to have an opportunity presented to you for which you are not prepared. Plan. You don't get what you want in life, you get what you prepare for. You get what you prepare for. And remember, 1 Corinthians 10:13, there hath no temptation taken you but such as is common to man, but God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you're able, but will with the temptation make a way to escape that you may be able to bear it. Now, in other words, you need to have an escape plan already prepared. Have an escape plan that, you know what? When he starts acting the fool, when she starts acting the fool, you have to have an escape plan to keep from going to jail. You got to have an escape plan. I mean, what's going to help me when my frustration is up here? What in the world is going to help me from having violence in my eyes? What's going to help me? What's going to keep me from that? What in the world am I going to use that is going to keep me from that? So it requires something. It requires something that you really plan. That you plan. You have an escape plan. You've got to anticipate that there will be enemies and haters in your life. You honestly do. The promised land has enemies. There were enemies in the promised land. They had to deal with that. So you have to plan for resistant forces working against you. You must plan for it. It strips out the frustration if you've got a plan for it. So you know when they come start giving you backlip, you've already planned it because you anticipated that they were going to start giving you excuses. You anticipate their fussing. You anticipate it. And you prepare your way of escape ahead of time. You have to sometimes just go to a mental fantasy land, just to take you out of the place of frustration. But remember this, hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. It is not a plan. You can't just hope that everything is going to turn out okay. You have to have a plan. You have to have a plan. If you're going to go out of town, don't hope that you can make it all of the way to California on one tank of gas. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have a plan. Planning requires thought and forethought. It requires thought and forethought. There's certain things that you're going to have to think of ahead of time so that if I encounter this, that I'm prepared to deal with it. Planning requires having clear objectives. You have to have very clear objectives. Clear thoughts and forethought. So, remember this, that the fewer your number of questions, the longer your journey. The less questions that you ask, the longer your journey is going to be. You know, you can stop and ask people for directions. Well, I know they don't want to ask anybody now because they got navigation systems. But the fewer questions that you ask in life, the longer your journey is going to be. So planning means that you've already thought about, you know, what we call the SWOT, your strengths and your weaknesses, your opportunities, and the threats. Again, you must anticipate negative forces. Anticipate them. That what are we going to do if this happens? If this particular issue happens? You have to think ahead of negative things that are going to happen so that you are not caught on the blind side, surprised by it. You get ready to do something good, you're going to run into demonic and satanic opposition. You would think that everything is going to help you because I am doing the Lord's will. And you would think that people are just going to open up the door for you to come in and do things and send money to you and all of this kind of thing. You are going to battle some terrible demons through all kinds of situations. If you ever do anything that will ever amount to anything, you will never do it without attack. If there are no enemies there, there is no reward there. Don't waste your time fighting a fight that does not have a reward. And you ought to be able to look at it and say, this thing is worth it. But find out in your planning, what's my strength here? What's my strength? What are my weaknesses? And what opportunities do I have? What are my threats here? You remember God gave Gideon a plan to defeat the Midianites? And then God gave Joshua a plan to bring down the walls of Jericho. It didn't just happen. God gave them a plan. They had a plan. They had a plan. And for Joshua, they had to plan ahead, and then they had to keep their mouth shut. Failure to plan is a plan for failure. It is. So planning helps you to control changes. It helps you to control changes, to adjust your sail, to work with the wind rather than against the wind when you plan. Louis Pasteur said that in the field of observation, chance favors only the prepared mind. Only the prepared mind. And you know, there are certain things, in Matthew chapter 14, Jesus came to the disciples on the water. Now, it's ironic that Jesus came to them on the very thing that was frightening them. There was a storm on the sea. They were afraid of the waters that were vehement and boisterous all around them, and Jesus came to them on the very thing that they were afraid of. Could it be that the very thing that is intimidating you, that Jesus is coming on it? And the only reason that Jesus comes on the very thing that threatens you is to prove his power and dominance over that thing. To say, I've already conquered them. I've already conquered this thing. And if you'll go back and read the story in the 14th chapter of Matthew, when they cried out for fear, Jesus said to them, it is I, be of good cheer. Be of good cheer. He said, chill out. He's like, be happy. Don't be frustrated, worried, scared to death. He's saying, be of good cheer. They were the words that came out of Jesus' mouth. That's what he said to frustrated, scared folk was cheer up. Cheer up. Matthew 14:27. Whenever you get frustrated, or you don't know how to do certain things in your life, you're just frustrated, out of your wits. That is the time to allow God to come into your life. Listen, whenever you're frustrated, it's one of the best times in the world for you to make a godly resolve. Let me say this to you. There are some things in your life that you will never, hear me carefully, experience deliverance in until you reach a point, I've had enough. When you come to the point, I've had enough, you qualify for God's divine deliverance. When you get to that place where I am confronting this, I'm fed up with it, you are a prime candidate for the deliverance power of God, because something down in your spirit has become so vexed, and a desperation on the inside of you is saying, something has got to give. I have had enough. When you reach that point where you're saying, God, I've had enough. I've had enough. I'm done. I am done. When you get done, God will deliver you. Not a day sooner. As long as you're saying, let me sleep with my frogs one more night, he'll let you stay there with the frogs. But when you get to that point where I have had enough, you're not going to treat me like this anymore. I've had enough. You're ready to be delivered. When you reach that point where I have had enough of being depressed, I've had enough of this sickness, you have ridden me long enough, devil. I've tolerated you riding my back long enough. I've had enough. I've had enough. It is where you are drawing a line in the sands of time, and you are double daring the devil, saying, listen, I have come thus far. You've come thus far in my life, and you will come no further. It is getting fed up to where you draw a bloodline. This is with the blood of Yeshua, the Christ that died for you. And you said, I have had enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I've had enough disrespect. I've had enough sickness. I've had enough heartache. I've had enough sleepless night. I have cried enough tears. It is enough. When you get to that point of saying it's enough, my God, when something happens, a godly resolve that rises in your spirit to say, I'm not taking it anymore. I'm finished with this. I'm washing my hands of this thing now. When you get to that place where, God, I've had enough. I've had enough. That's the last bit of dope that I'm having. It's enough. If he has to let that stuff make you sick, you will never quit what you're still in love with. God has to make it become a sickening thing until your love for Christ becomes greater than your lust for your sin. You cannot be delivered. But when you reach that point in your life where you said, I've had enough. It is enough. It is enough. I cannot take it another day. I don't want any more of this. I've had enough. Now you qualify for the deliverance power of God to come into your life. When you've been in the fiery furnace long enough, then the fourth man appears and changes the temperature to where you can handle this thing. Then you experience the deliverance. I believe that God is waiting for some of his saints to rise up in their spirits and say, I've had enough. 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 It is saying, stop the insanity. Stop the craziness. Stop the vileness. Stop the disrespect. Stop the looseness. Stop the immorality. Stop the violence. It is saying, I have had enough. I've had enough of lack. I've had enough of struggling to live from hand to mouth. I've had enough of living that way. When you get fed up in your heart, in your mind that you make a godly resolve that I am done with this thing. Out of your frustration can come one of the greatest resolves that God could ever bring into your life. And your life can be revolutionized and changed by the glory of God, just because you reach that place where you, by your own actions and convictions of your heart, are telling God, Lord, I'm now ready for you to deliver me now. I've had enough. I throw in the towel, Lord, it's all on you now. Take it or leave it. I don't care what happens now. When you get to that place, my God, he will deliver you, and the very thing that has been hunting you will lose its power over your life. Because when you conquer fear, fear will tuck its head between its legs and walk away in shame. It'll scurry away from you. Though they will have come united, like a united force where everything was just coming against you. But when you get to that place that you said enough and God delivers you, your enemies will scatter in 7 different directions. God is just waiting for you to get fed up. There are 2 things that move the hand of God like nothing else. One is when you get hungry for God, and one is when you get fed up with the devil. Either one will drive God to bring deliverance into your life. When you hunger for him, and when you get fed up with all of the mess that the devil has been bringing in your life. I'm glad that some things are happening and that some people hopefully are getting fed up to where they say enough. You've come thus far and no more. I've had enough. Frustrated, no more. I have had enough. I'm done. I've already worried as long as I'm going to worry. I'm done. I'm done. Now you qualify for the supernatural, divine provisions of God.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. Until next time, God bless you.